Good morning. This is Norma Cowie here, and for Norma Talks. It's Wednesday. Here we go, November the 23rd. So I can't remember if next Wednesday, I think we'll be doing our reading for December anyway, one way or the other. But today I have a little different topic. Well, it's not that different from things I've spoken about before. I had a client. Well, I have a client actually. But some time ago we did the special of the transformation program where we do 3 sessions. And during that, it had come up about a 6-year-old. And then she emailed me just recently and said, she was working with somebody else and said, the 6-year-old came up again. And I know you have a process that works with that. And I said, yes, I do. I don't use it very often. But at one time it was all that when I did transformation, got me into the transformation work. So anyway, we did the process and I had an email come in thanking me that she can't believe how different she feels and how everything is just opening up for her. And so I was really pleased about that. And although I have spoken on this before, but I've been doing talks now for nearly 3 years. So it's about me sharing this again, perhaps from a little different perspective. I wrote a little booklet about this actually called Connecting to the Light. And an inner transformation process. And it was my first real, besides the past life regression, which is also an inner transformation process, believe it or not, this was my first real awareness of how we freeze in space and time when I became aware of that. And so I began to recognize that what's important is that we take these frozen parts of ourselves and we bring the light to them, which is the law of love, and allow that energy that's stuck in going there. Now, what happens is that, and this is what I've spoken quite a bit about, is that from conception on, we freeze in space and time. And in that space and time, what happens is something occurs and we go back in our memory banks to the last time we experienced it, and we remake the same decisions. In those decisions, they have our belief systems about ourselves, about life, about many, many different things. And so that's how we get programmed. This is our programming. We're not talking about the programming that comes from outside in society. And this is about our inner programming that we have in particular for themselves. Now, what I'm highlighted certain things in my little booklet here, just so I make sure that I know them. Now, I don't like reading very much, but sometimes I think if I read it, it makes more sense than perhaps just me always talking just off my head. And so I wanted to just read a couple of paragraphs here before I start talking about people's experiences. And it goes like this. First of all, you as an adult may have decided to have happiness, love, and enjoyment in your life. You have wanted to make changes. You have taken courses. You have listened to tapes and done affirmations. In fact, therefore, you have done everything it's said to do. Yet, you find no matter how much you work on creating what you want, you do not create it. Something always happens to take away what you have been striving for. So you begin to mentally beat yourself up because you know what to do and you should be behaving differently, or you should be obtaining what you want, yet you do not. It remains out of reach. You'll notice there was a sentence I deliberately wrote because I put the word should in there, because very often we think we should do this or we should do that. We should be somewhere or other. Now, the next little paragraph goes like this. When you understand how the frozen child works, how one is frozen in certain feelings, then you can be free to connect with the light and transform the energy to easily create what you want. You may have been a 3-year-old who felt the feeling of abandonment when you got lost in a store. As the 3-year-old, you have made a decision in that feeling of abandonment, which puts a belief structure in place. Decisions like, I'm alone, I'm no good, nobody loves me. This feeling of abandonment and consequent decisions and belief structures put into place becomes your frozen child's reality, and it will keep recreating the emotion it originally felt in order to know it's real. Every time you, the adult, strives to be happy or have a close relationship, the frozen inner 3-year-old feels the emotional shift, knows something is wrong to it, and immediately reacts. Its objective is to bring its reality back, the abandonment, the aloneness, the feeling of, I'm no good, or whatever else it has decided. Now, it goes on like that, explaining why and how there. And then I've got, actually, I've got topics in the book, and the next section I wanted to sort of look at because it tells about some stories of why you decide what you decide. And excuse me I've had this little niggle in from my nose down to my throat, and I haven't been able to stop it this morning yet. So now, one of the stories was, and this happened. This story came from a lot of years ago. Do not remember the person's name, and I know this applies to many people, so nobody knows who this person is, but it goes like this. A successful businessman came to see me because he was having problems in his relationship. He was always feeling he was not good enough and could not live up to certain expectations. We began the transformation process with a memory of him at 16. The 16-year-old remembered being embarrassed and insecure at the jokes being made by the older boys in the locker room. When my client followed the feeling back in time, he remembered being 13, and the 13-year-old remembered having the same feeling at 10. The 10-year-old, when told to remember back to the first time he remembered feeling this feeling, went all the way back to being brought home from the hospital after being born. His father had taken time off from harvesting to come and bring his wife and new second son home. Just want to say here, I really feel a lot about this was because he was a second son, not even though it was harvesting and the father was busy. The man already had one son, now he just has a second one. The baby felt his father's impatience at getting back home to his harvesting. When he felt his father's energy, he made the decision he was not wanted. And because he was not wanted, it meant that he was no good and he should not have been born. These mental decisions were accompanied by a feeling that he had let them down by being born because he was not good enough. When the baby was asked to look all around his memories and go to the first time he could remember feeling this feeling, he went back to a past life. The client remembered being a hunter in Africa, out with his spear looking for food, when a leopard charged and killed him. His last feelings as he died was that he had let the village down, he was no good, and could not be relied on. When he encountered his new dad's irritation and impatience, my client had the emotional reaction, reaching back into his memory banks of the last time he had this feeling, remembered the decisions he had made when the leopard killed him, and he redecided he was no good. There's some other things. And anyway, I should explain that he'd become a very good hockey player. He had become a successful businessman. He just kept running into this early decision of letting people down and being no good. This feeling particularly showed up in close relationships, and which he kept feeling he was letting them down and was not good enough. And then because of there was expectations of him to perform, which the programming said he could not do. So it sounds really like, okay, his father was upset. How come he made these decisions? But when you take things in process of what's gone on in other lifetimes, and very often in our society, people don't even think about that. What do you mean past lives? Now, I happen to get into all this work, deeper work, I should say, in a way, is because of past lives. And thank goodness I know how to transform that and really also look inside ourselves to make sure that we're going. The thing is, and I want to bring this before I tell you another story, you, the adult, will also have compensated for beliefs that you hold to be true. In fact, beliefs which appear to be working for you, helping you get what you want, often will have been made in compensation to cover up, hide from, push away the original decisions that are there. Excuse me again. The decision, I am no good, will often be followed with a decision, I'll show them. The secondary decision will appear to be helping you get where you want to go, but the original decision is underneath, is always waiting to exert itself and bring back the original I'm no good feeling. There's much more about this, about the bottom line feelings you will have, and which actually often are described as worthless, valueless, useless, or powerless. These feelings we can all find. We can either find them from our mental perspective or emotional perspective. And the key is once you really get to that point of feeling those baseline feelings and transfer, not just about acknowledging them, it's transforming them. And for that, I always use light, which is love, and make a difference. Now, there's another factor that a lot of people don't take into effect. I call them splits. And they most often occur when physical violence has been experienced. And this is when you have split. I have found each split is a whole, complete inner child who has made its own decisions with resulting belief structures and behaviors. These decisions are totally contradicting, and in fact, usually are. I know there was one story where I was working with a gal who had been raped at the age of 14. There had been she split into three. One decided life is scary, one decided men are horrible, and one decided I'll show men I'm better than they are. And they're not going to get the best of me. That must have been, and then there was another one, I must prove I am strong. And this resulted in the person's life not going very well. I must prove I'm strong. This would result in the person's, I'm rereading myself there. She will find one child wanting to hide, scared, one wanting to do nothing to do with men are horrible, one child wanting to interact with men to show she was better, and this being backed by going into competition with men, proving I'm strong. I've got 4 beliefs there, so anyway, I thought it was 3. It was only when each and every frozen split was connected to the light, the decisions, beliefs, and energy of the decision are released, and then they were integrated as one, that this person was able to have a productive relationship. I just find splitting is so often what happens. Another story I thought I could share today. I was working on healing a procrastination problem. At the time, we were working with a 6-year-old whom my client described as a good boy, often a clue that there is a split. During the connecting with the light, the transformation process, I was aware the process of information was slower than usual. When my inner voice said to me, remember to check for splits, this boy was hit. That was information we had got when we talked about his life back there. Doubling back on my process, I had the boy check around, and sure enough, hiding in the background was another 6-year-old, frightened and scared, and allowing the good boy to do the work. Once the hidden 6-year-old was found and the two integrated, the connecting in the light went easily. The 6-year-old creating the holding back, the procrastination, right, was hiding and procrastinating. Soon after this session, my client reported he was involved in many different situations, and he certainly was not procrastinating. So we can have many what we would consider just regular things that go on in life, but often they're formed by what is working. And I thought I would share something from myself as well. Because sometimes people like myself who are out here talking and speaking, it looks like, we have it all together. And very often we do not at all. We're still working, but we have done a lot of personal work. We have done the work. I could not work with the people I work with if I hadn't already been through my own journey. I'm just trying to think where I wanted to start here. I didn't have that. I kind of had that mark. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. When I began to explore my inner frozen children, I discovered that I had made a decision that I was very young, that I was not good enough. Sound familiar? I was around 9 months old, and the family were all looking at me, hanging around the bassinet, gooing and guying, which means they were talking, but to me it wouldn't have recognized the words. When I realized these people had expectations of me, which I felt I could not live up to. I did not feel I was good enough. I must explain that the sister before me was nearly 16, and my oldest sister was probably, she was 3 years older, about 19. And so there was this big age gap, same parents. And then I was born then, and then as we will see, I had a younger brother nearly 3 years later. Anyway, but I was very spoiled. I will admit that. But here I am in 9 months making a decision that I'm not good enough. I can't live up to these expectations. Now, I reinforced this belief when I was 3 and my brother was born, hanging over his bassinet when he was crying. I felt very inadequate because I was too small to do anything. The memory I have is being swept aside and my brother being picked up. Through my inadequacy of being able to help, plus feeling in the way, by being pushed aside, I created a strong 3-year-old in a frozen child who controlled a large portion of my life thereafter until I connected and transformed her. I spent a large portion of my life feeling insecure, inadequate, and not good enough. Years later, through doing my transformation work, I went to where this not good enough feeling came from. I saw myself as a Roman gladiator, a beautiful, healthy specimen who loved fighting in the arena and always won. Then one day he was hurt. Someone slashed the back of his leg, and although he won that fight, he gave up. He gave up believing in himself because he was marred. He decided he was not good enough. When he went back into the arena to fight, he lost and was killed, when in reality, he could have won the fight easily. Many lifetimes later in this lifetime, when I sensed the unspoken expectations of my family, it brought out the I cannot do it. I cannot succeed. I'm not good enough feeling. I decided it was true. I always wanted to be acknowledged and noticed, in effect, be good enough. I thereby created a secondary program where I made sure people noticed me. I had a loud voice, and when I was little, I demanded attention. Sometimes that meant my father giving me a good spanking, actually, but I was noticed, right? I created a career and received the acknowledgement I wanted, but underneath lurked the feeling I'm not good enough and I do not deserve. And consequently, the acknowledgements did not last. I would either sabotage myself or I would drive myself again into another new height of acknowledgement. It was only with connecting to the light and transforming the energy that I was able to let go of the need for acknowledgement and change my basic motivation. I did something because I wanted to, not because I would be acknowledged for it. By changing my base decision, I was able to change decisions I had made in the future. Through identifying the decisions, I could transform them. The more I connected to the light, the more whole and complete inside I felt. Plus, a side benefit was I began to hear the acknowledgement which I had previously desired, but in reality, I had not heard. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you have these frozen inner children, and as I've pointed out, they can come in and make a decision, but then we'll counter that decision because we don't like what's going on. But the underneath decision, the base decision, always has the most power, because it's like laying things on a what would you call a spongy background base, and you're laying other things on top. The acknowledgement is really important because I got a lot of acknowledgement of things that I did. I never heard them. And even sometimes today, I have to take a breath to take it in, because there's still a little bit of that from habit. Actually, it's just a habit of yeah, oh yeah, I'll push it apart. I don't say, yes, that was, whatever it is. And so it is really, really important to really understand you are more than you realize on the top what's happening. And if there is a problem, very often, now I do these transformations, because from doing this work, I realized there were still parts we were missing, because these energies are held in many different systems in our bodies. So that's why I call it the energy transformation process, is because we want to hit those, the chakra system, many other systems that we have running through us, our male, female, our different aspects, our emotional aspect, our psychic aspect, our mental aspect, our balancing of those. Like, there's a lot of things I began to realize that we needed to address. So that's what I began to eventually combine. But also I noticed, and every now and again I'd say to somebody, I think we need to do this other process with you. And because when we have a very strong decision made, it doesn't always give up. I had a lot of 7-year splits at the age of 7. And I really, because I was working with myself, I very often didn't catch them all. And one day I was just running energy through my body, love energy, running from the earth up through my feet. And that's how I found a lot of my little bits and pieces that were running around inside. And this one day I ran across a 7-year-old that was absolutely frozen. She only looked down. She was totally like an ice sculpture. It took me a long time, actually, to get the light to melt that frozen 7-year-old. It was after that I became more empowered within myself. She was kind of the last missing piece that needed to come in for me to claim my power, because I didn't have power in relationships at all up to that point. And so it was very often in one part of my life, I was very successful and did very well, even though I was still dealing with not being good enough at times. But in my relationships, I tended to give my power away and struggled to be in my personal power and move into what I call power with. So many of us have this, but it's not generally recognized that, yes, as the psychology often says, a lot of these things start with your childhood. But it's just not the circumstance. It's the decisions you make, and not everybody who goes through the same situation makes the same decision, because that's going to depend on what's happened in other lifetimes and other situations. So that was my talk today, because someone kindly sent me an email thanking me for the work that was done. Acknowledgement. So I acknowledge that we were able to transform a split that had 5 parts to it, now as one part. So just remember, if you have a product of physical violence or even sexual violence from when you were young, you probably have at some point split and made different decisions, and you wonder why life doesn't always give you what you want or get you where you want to go or create what you want to create. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for all the wonderful different things that you do. I will be back on Sunday and then again on Monday for mental mind treatments. I do want to suggest, if you would like, mental mind treatments are getting a lot of views. I would want to suggest, if you really would like me to do a mental mind treatment for you, either email me, message me, do anything to get hold of me by 6 o'clock on Monday night. If emails come in late, I find, and that makes it difficult. But if I can, and then Monday night I'm live at 7 on my YouTube channel. And I'm very, very happy to do a mental mind treatment for you, which is a way of transforming and understanding and coming to terms with things as they are. And it's a type of prayer. So anyway, have a great day. Bye for now.